Rule-making authority is shared in complex ways between courts and governments due to the relationship between statutes and cases. As we know, governments create statutes and they can delegate the authority to make some rules. And we know that courts make rules of law in cases, or case decisions. It gets interesting where you have a statute that codifies the case law. For example, there could be a number of decisions in a particular subject area, say wills and estates. And the government may be of the view that those decisions either go in a direction the government doesn't like, or it could be that over time the decisions have within themselves some ambiguity. Different courts writing in different jurisdictions, or one court within the same jurisdiction but writing at different times could lead to some ambiguity in what the rule of law actually is. So you can have the government step in to clean up an area of law by writing a codifying statute that attempts to establish a single clear rule where previously there was ambiguous cases, and a number of them, or possibly even one case that was poorly written. So the government will codify the law in that case. Government could also overrule cases. If the government thinks that the cases are not supporting the policy the government wants, the government can write a statute that overrules the cases. Henceforth, the rules from those cases won't apply, but the rule that the government writes will. So that would appear to say that the government has ultimate rule-making authority. Where it gets a little more subtle is due to the interpretation of the cases and their meaning and validity by the courts. So, as we've seen in another part of the course, a statute can be taken to court by a citizen to find out whether the government had the authority to make that rule. It could also be that a statute is tested in the courts when the courts are asked whether the statute means what the law enforcer says the statute means. In that situation, the court has to interpret the statute. And when the court interprets the ambiguous wording of the statute, the court is clarifying the rule and giving that statute meaning. In that case, we could say that the courts are establishing the rule because they're writing a rule that resolves an ambiguity or perhaps an omission or perhaps a contradiction in a statute. The statute writers sometimes work very hard to write detailed and complicated statutes to eliminate any ambiguity, but sometimes the very effort to do so results in so much complexity that you end up with a contradiction or an ambiguity that was not intended, in which case the courts have to interpret that statute and explain what it means. So, ultimate rule-making authority may be with the government to write a statute that codifies or repeals some cases, or it could be with the courts to interpret and apply the statutes. As we see in other parts of the course, there are a number of ways courts can interpret statutes.